a few more people. All right, click off on that. So welcome everyone. My name is Marianne Haverhill. I'm the chair of the of this committee, the Economic Alliance Livable and Sustainable Communities Committee. Also the executive director of the Community Foundation of the Valleys. And I want to welcome all of you. Thank you for joining us. We have some folks that come every month, and then we always have some new guests. So I think we have time this morning to go around and just quickly just say your name and your affiliation, not anything more because we don't have time for that, but just your name and affiliation, just so that John and Terry know. We have a very, very diverse group. So just so they know who the audience is that they're speaking with. So Erica, why don't you kick it off?
Thank you. I'm Erica Gasson with the Valley Economic Alliance. And so happy to be part of the committee, and thank you for having me.
Erica does such a great job keeping us in line. So Dan Blake.
Yeah, Dan Blake, retired professor of economics from Cal State Northridge.
Great. Patty.
Sorry about that. Hi, Patty McJennet with Los Angeles Tourism and Convention Board.
Great. Donna.
Donna Deutschman with Homes for Families, Veteran Enriched Neighborhoods.
Great. Nikki.
Nikki Azhari with, I'm on the external relations team with Bureau of Street Services, which is now Streets LA.
Great. Betsy.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Betsy Aguilar, and I'm with the San Fernando Valley Council of Governments.
Oh, great. So you work with John. Good deal. Rafael.
Good morning. Rafael Garcia with Big Belly Solar.
Claudia.
Claudia Dunn Martinez with UCLA Health.
And we'll get to Terry in a moment. Louise.
Good morning. I'm Louise Oliver, Goodwill, Southern California, and one of the founders of the Salvation Army Bell Homeless Shelter.
Great. Jessica.
Jessica Cruz with Southland Regional Association of Realtors.
Great. Juana.
Hi, Juana Torres, Environmental Project Manager at One Generation Senior Center.
I see you have lots of trees behind you, beautiful scenery. So I guess that makes sense given that you're involved in the environment. Great. Cynthia.
Cynthia Clemens, Abundant Housing LA.
Great. Yolanda. Yolanda. All right, we'll come back to her. Gary.
Gary Parker, San Fernando, Santa Clarita Valley Homeless Coalition.
Great. Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Melissa Kamhai from Human IT.
Wonderful. And Diane?
Diane Seidel, Southland Regional Association of Realtors.
Great. And then we'll go back to Yolanda. Are you there? All right, maybe not. Okay, well, that's all right. So we will get to our program today, and just so grateful to have both John and Terry with us. I've known John for a long time, and I've been sort of a secret admirer. He has been so involved in the Valley and the LA region for many years, working for elected officials, and now with his own consulting company, Stratiscope Consulting, and he works with both for-profit companies as well as government properties, government entities, and has also done a lot of work, has developed programs for leader development for emerging leaders. So we're very glad to have you, John, and take it away. We'd love to hear more about what the Council of Governments is doing these days.
Sure, and let me start with just a quick thank you for having me. I was on these committees about 15 years ago, I think, Erica, when I don't remember, I think it wasn't, well, that was the marketing committee, but Livable Communities, I remember, I think it was Bob Scott who was the co-chair back then. And so it's good to see some familiar faces once again, from Donna to Patty to Raphael. We've had all of us have had many roles in the Valley over the years. And although Patty's been, I think, with a different name, but same industry, same organization with a different name over the years. But let me give a little primer about the COG and the COG system, and then Terry, jump in if I've misrepresented our industry here. So councils of government are subdivisions or groupings of different public sector agencies. They can be formed for a number of reasons, but in our case, when we talk about the COG itself, the Council of Government is about multiple local jurisdictions working together for a common purpose. In LA County, right, the most populous county in the country, we have 10 million people, 88 cities. Within the county, there are, I think it's 8 COGs now. And so that there's regions represented by joint powers that work together. There's the South Bay, which is the South Bay. There's one called Gateway, which is the areas sort of north of Long Beach, the 710 corridor. That's called the Gateway Cities COG. There's the San Gabriel Valley COG. There is the Arroyo Verdugo COG, and I'll get to that in a minute, which is Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena, La Cañada, and LA County. And I think maybe South Pass as well for Arroyo Verdugo. There's North County Transportation Coalition, which is Lancaster, Palmdale, and Santa Clarita. And then I don't want to speak for Terry, but there is the Las Virgenes-Malibu COG just to the west of the San Fernando Valley COG that Terry's in charge of, and he'll speak to that in a minute. But of all these COGs, oh, and there's also West Side Cities COG, which is Beverly Hills, Culver City, LA City, Santa Monica, I think maybe one other, West Hollywood. So you have all these COGs, various sizes, various memberships. The San Fernando Valley COG is one of the newer ones, but not the newest. In fact, we used to be one of the newest. And when I started in 2014. The organization was officially chartered in 2012, but the cities had worked on it for a while before then. I know some of you, I think Dan was involved. I don't know, Marianne, if you were involved back then. But it was the Alliance and others that sort of helped spearhead this. It was one of the, I don't want to say concessions, but one of the outcomes of the secession movement of 2001, when the Valley voted by like 51% or 52% to secede from the city, but the rest of the city did not vote over 50%, if anybody recalls that history. And in that sort of process of like, what can we do to engage more as a region here? The idea of a COG was floated around to sort of give more voice and attract more funding for the San Fernando Valley portion of LA. Early on, there was the idea that we would create a COG just for the Valley portion of the city of LA. But in fact, that's not possible based on the way that everything works. And so they actually had to form and strategically align with other jurisdictions. And so back in that era of 2005 to 2010, it was talking to Burbank and Glendale and San Fernando and Calabasas and Santa Clarita. And what ended up forming ultimately was the San Fernando Valley COG, which is now and was then made up of 5 jurisdictions. And I'll tell you, LA City, north of Mulholland, Burbank, Glendale, San Fernando, Santa Clarita, and the county of LA. So the unincorporated areas of like Universal City. There's some unincorporated up in the North Valley and into the Santa Clarita area. Not quite La Crescenta, but the areas north of Glendale that are unincorporated. And so it's actually 6 jurisdictions, 5 cities, 1 county. It was designed before I started working for them. It was designed, I think, that grouping sort of on a report that the Alliance put out on the 5 corridor. If anybody recalls, there was a report on the economic value, if you will, of the 5 corridor from Atwater Village, Glendale, up through Santa Clarita. And it was sort of that project that sort of unified this area to say we could continue to work together. So we were formed in 2012, and the original executive director was Bob Scott. He was really the mastermind behind this and did so much. And I know he was very active in this committee for years. He put this all together, and the Alliance supported it. It actually was housed at the Alliance for a bit. And then a couple years later, I was selected after an RFP to serve as executive director starting in 2014. At that time, we were looking at focusing purely on transportation. The board of directors is made up of a representative from each of those 4 cities I mentioned: Burbank, Glendale, San Fernando, Santa Clarita, usually the mayor, but not always, because it rotates. And then each of the city council districts that were in the Valley at the time, and each of the supervisors. So we had, when I started, it was Zev Yaroslavsky and Mike Antonovich for the supervisors. And in the city, we had council districts 2 through 12, but not 13 or 9. I think it's the way, or 8, because it's, the way it works. So we had 7 council districts, 2 county supervisors, and 4 cities, 13-member board. In the last redistricting, that changed. We lost the 5th district from the San Fernando Valley for LA City. So our board actually diminished by 1 seat. And in this last election, there was a lot of change because of people retiring or otherwise. And so we're going to see probably 2 to 3 new board members come January on the board. So it would be the new county supervisor, who I'm not sure if that's final yet, but I think it appears to be final for the Valley. I don't want to make any misstatement here, but definitely the new member in Burbank, because Jess Telemontes, the mayor, didn't run again, so his seat is open. And then CD6 is currently vacant as well. So we're seeing a lot of new faces, but the seats are not by the individual, but by the position they hold. And so that's how we're structured. Again, back in 2014, when I took over, it was focused purely on transportation. Measure R had happened in 2008, and there was no COG, and so there was no specific funding for the San Fernando Valley region. In 2012, I think they had that measure. There was another measure that didn't pass, but they wanted to get ready for the next measure, which was going to be M in 2017. And so we really started working on that all in. And that was able to allow this board in 2016, 2017, to sort of put forth a plan to spend about $4 billion in the San Fernando Valley region that this board sort of controlled by proposing it to the Metro board so they could put it into the ballot language. And that's how we ended up with the East San Fernando Valley line on Van Nuys Boulevard. There was this is from memory, but about 1.3 billion that the board said, yes, we want to spend it there for a light rail on the San Fernando Valley, on Van Nuys Boulevard. We put more than $1 billion into the Sepulveda Pass Corridor project. We put money into bike paths on the LA River, the bike plan in San Fernando. There was a couple other smaller projects as well. The reason I bring that up is it was really focused. But if you heard, I didn't mention Santa Clarita, Burbank, or Glendale. What makes this interesting, just for those that are politically interested as well, is that each of those other COGs or cities is also part of another COG. So except for the city of San Fernando, all the other members, including LA County and LA City, are parts of other COGs in the LA County area that deal with transportation. So our job is to really work at those areas where the strength of the larger region of all those other cities benefits many ways the San Fernando Valley portion of the city of LA and city of San Fernando. It's using the weight of the region to bring resources to this particular city is fundamentally how it had worked to that point. Fast forward a few years, we started to look at homelessness and housing and a little bit of economic development as part of the work of the organization. LA County started to allocate resources to the subregions, as they called them, or the COGs, based on population and number of individuals experiencing homelessness. That's the formula they developed. But they started to exclude portions of our COG in doing that because they figured, well, LA City gets its own portion, so the San Fernando Valley COG doesn't get any resources for LA City's portion of the San Fernando Valley in terms of homeless resource coordination funding. Also, the city of Glendale has its own continuum of care, so the San Fernando Valley COG doesn't get any homeless money for the city of Glendale. So we actually only ended up with Burbank, San Fernando, and Santa Clarita as the individuals experiencing homeless that they counted when they developed the formula, and that was less. I think it was less than 500. And that didn't even meet a threshold for per capita funding. And they gave us just the minimum amount they would give anyone was $30,000 a year. So the COG has an agreement with the County of LA to coordinate the 2 million people and the 6 jurisdictions, but we're only funded $30,000 a year to do that. And it's really technically only for Burbank, San Fernando, and Santa Clarita, but we continue to do it for all the region as well, because it's just, how could you not? So there's some weird funding and weird formulas that both cripple, sort of make it difficult for us to do what other COGs are doing. So in many ways, we're very large. We're 1/5 of the county in population. but in many ways we are treated as if we are not that large by funding models, including Metro. So it's an interesting place to try to get things done. Just like in any government agency, our work is focused on bringing people together and moving coalitions forward, particularly at the governmental level. So we work a lot with city staff, and you can imagine the challenge of trying to coordinate with LA City and the city of San Fernando. City of San Fernando has about, I think it's like 24 administrative staff outside of their like public works, people in the street, police officers, et cetera. But people like working in offices, making decisions, policy advising to the council, 20 people for that city, right? City of LA, council district has 20 people. And so when working with a city, and I could go on for along on this topic, but I'll leave it at this topic for you here. Working with professional staff in cities is different than working with professional staff in council offices. And the way that LA City has done business for a long time is that council offices are the policy advisors and experts for decision makers, whereas in Glendale or Burbank or Santa Clarita, it's the staff at the sort of the city staff that are not political appointees that are helping to sort of run those cities and make those decisions. So my job is to try to, how do you find the link? How do we meet, a field deputy talks to a public works director and talk about transportation. And that's the challenge of our COG, but also the opportunity of leveraging the city of LA in bringing resources to the region. We are working currently on issues around transportation. We continue to monitor Sepulveda Pass, the East Valley line. Some of those are slow moving projects. They come to us. So we're under Brown Act. We meet every quarter. We're meeting virtually still, but probably later in 23, we'll start meeting in person again. We have a standing committee for transportation. That's the only committee that we have of the COG. We have a couple technical committees that are not, it's just like a working group where we bring together, like I said, those public works directors or transportation managers from the jurisdiction just to talk shop and like sort of help advise the board on issues technically. Call that a technical advisory committee. We work still in transportation, monitoring those bigger projects, but a confusion that folks have often is like, well, how come I can't get my street paved? I'm gonna talk to the Council of Governments. Well, we don't really actually have direct constituents in the public in so much as we have our constituents, our members are the jurisdictions and they hold constituents. And so we don't do a lot of public engagement, but we do some. We run a mobility academy every year. It's going to launch up in February, where we take civic leaders or even city staff, and we run them through a 5-week, 5-session program where they look at the key transportation issues of the Valley. And we meet experts, they meet funders, they meet practitioners to help create a more complete picture of what it takes to get transportation and mobility projects underway and address the needs of a large, diverse community. Everything from goods movement to fixed rail to buses, et cetera. Even we talk about the basics of like what causes congestion on the freeway, because oftentimes we don't get that training. I speak as a former staffer from an elected office for more than a decade in the Valley. So we have that academy. We also run an annual mobility workshop. Last year, we focused on aerial mobility, and we'll continue that conversation to think about how does the San Fernando Valley position itself to accept new technologies as a region, recognizing that aerial mobility doesn't stop at a city boundary. Even though we know our freeways and roads don't stop at city boundaries, there's sort of a jurisdictional divide. But when it comes to airspace, we're all in this together, and a region like the San Fernando Valley is poised to work together with relationship to the other parts of the region in terms of these aerial mobility concepts that are coming to light. So we're working on that. And then on the homelessness front, as I mentioned, we host a monthly coordination meeting of our cities in order to make sure that they're up to speed on what resources and programs are available. We can't do as much as other jurisdictions or other councils of governments. For instance, our friends in the San Gabriel Valley actually have full-time staff doing outreach. The city will call and say, hey, I've got an individual experiencing homelessness. Is there on this location? Can you send a team out? Can you coordinate? And they actually do that where they work with other providers and they're actually coordinating direct service We don't have the resources to do that at our COG. Just so you know, our annual budget is $120,000 a year. And so it's a very cost-effective agency, if I could call it that. It's paid by dues and some simple fundraising and grants that we get. So it's not a big organization. We don't have dozens of staff. Just like Terry, we're on contract. Some of the smaller COGs don't have all the infrastructure that San Gabriel Valley or Gateway Cities or South Bay COG would have to run programs and procedures. The other thing is we have the 3 of the top 4 cities in the county in terms of population. So with LA, Santa Clarita, and Glendale, they're very effective organizations to address their concerns, right? They have all of them, I think, have direct lobbyists or folks that work in Sacramento and DC to advocate their position in terms of resources. Whereas when you look at the San Gabriel Valley and you have, more than 20 individual cities ranging from size of less than 1,000 to maybe 100,000 or 120,000, that coordination is required. They have to work together because, 2 miles later, you're in another city, 2 miles later, you're in another city, 2 miles later, you're in another city. If you need to do a bike lane, you have to coordinate. Whereas if you're in the city of LA, you can go 10, 15 miles and still be in the city of LA for that bike lane. So those are the things that we address and deal with. So when it comes to homelessness, we're doing our best to coordinate. We have a sort of a regional statement of position, if you will, that looks at like approaches that we're all working towards together, but it's not about any specific activity, but rather the approach to the activities undertaken to address and serve those individuals. We have no, we don't own property, we don't own facilities, and so there's nothing that we're doing directly in terms of the direct services. The other project we're doing is marrying the issue with SCAG funding. We've been working to address where you place housing based on vehicle miles traveled. This might get a little technical, so I'll just leave it at the idea that we're creating a tool, a technical tool with mapping that allows the jurisdiction to sort of plot in locations within their jurisdiction where they can see if they build housing there, what the commute might be to a job center or other jobs, sort of to help plan for the placement of future housing development so that we can make the rationale of where housing should be placed that makes the most sense to actually keep people less in their cars. There's some very practical, like observational things we can think about, but this tool will actually be a resource that they can actually use and have some technical backing to it. And that's been underway for about a year and should launch early next year. Again, it's for cities and city staff to use. And that's really the function of our COG fundamentally, is to behind the scenes support our cities in being able to serve their communities as best they can. So that's sort of a little bit of what we're about and what we're working on. I'll stop there and turn it back to Marianne.
Thanks, John. Great to have that overview and a little bit of a history behind the COGs and so on. I remember those days when Bob Scott was getting this all started, and good to know that there's advocates like you that are helping to get money to the Valley, because you mentioned the secession vote years ago, and that was largely because people in the Valley felt like the city of LA was ignoring us, and so it's good to know that there's people out there that are doing that. I wasn't quite sure. I'm going to open it up for a few minutes of questions and then we'll go on to Terry. But I wasn't quite sure when you talked about funding for the homeless issue, kind of how that worked. I know there's someone here on the committee on the call from homeless services, that there's a collaboration of agencies and so on, but maybe you could explain that a little bit. I got that we got billions of dollars for transportation money, but
right.
Yeah.
So we get 30,000, like I said, we get $30,000 a year in partnership with the county through the Measure H funding to do coordination among the jurisdictions, make sure they're talking to each other and coordinating. If there's a grant application that they can go for, we share it with them and help. Hey, can Burbank and Glendale, can you guys work on this together? Is that something? Oh yeah, we could. And then they go back and they do it. But it's simply coordination, resource allocate, resource sharing. We also participate in the San Fernando Valley, Santa Clarita Coalition on Homelessness. I think it's called. I have a staff member who goes there and participates there. They work with the spas, the whole spa too, to sort of coordinate in that regard. But we don't have money coming to us per se to do direct service. So the COG line item for homeless coordination is $30,000 a year out of that 120.
Okay, so the fund, the larger pot of money is really going to the service providers. You have a little piece of
Correct.
it, but the
Yeah.
larger, because I know there is a lot of activity and some great organizations in the Valley. that are
Yes.
Great
And we
work.
don't, we don't have any oversight of that. That's all through the LAHSA and LA County. And all we do is try to do our best to sort of say, like, hey, think about it this way in our region, because this is what our cities have said they want us to think about in this region, because it is different. Like what's happening here versus what's happening in central LA is slightly different. Not exactly. What's happening here in San Gabriel Valley is slightly different. And so we have to make sure we're letting regional bodies that are bigger than our region know why our region is different and how they might serve our region.
Yeah. And just in case anybody doesn't know, LAHSA stands for LA Homeless Services Authority. And there's a board that meets and they coordinate a lot of effort. So any other questions for John? Let me see. I need to look at the whole screen.
I see Dennis has his hand up.
Dennis has his hand.
Okay.
It's good to see you, John, and I'm glad to see you're hard at it still for our benefit here in the Valley, which includes all the way out to Westlake Village, as you can think about, when we're dealing with the COGs that serve this geographic region. But my question is, do we get any help out of the Measure W money or any of the LACCD money, the LA Community College District, because we have obviously Mission, Pierce, and Valley College. They just got another $5.1 billion worth of bonds, and be nice to have those jobs and that educational opportunity working for the bunch of us as well. Is that something that's on the radar for the COG?
No, in short, no. The primary focus the board has given direction on is on transportation and housing. Or homelessness and housing. And so that's where we have spent the last couple of years focusing. It has been just with it, like everyone, the pandemic. It was hard enough before the pandemic when we had these huge geography and the very spread out region. In some ways, the pandemic has helped us because we're able to come together very easily. Nobody has to drive because we have virtual platforms. But at the same time, it meant that people were really hunkering into their own cities. And so the positions on those two issues sort of were established 5 or 6 years ago, and they haven't really wavered. The board hasn't had the appetite to take on new things or to sort of stray from the two sort of key priorities of the region. And so when it comes to other Measure W or other fund LACCD, that's not something that we've dipped our toe into. And I don't anticipate it right now. I think that the board is pretty focused on these things because they are local cities and local governments. And when it comes to other districts that are other jurisdictions, there is sometimes some hesitance or just that they're not aware of it as much. And so the answer is no, we've not dipped into those areas.
Well, I would just add, if I can, Measure HHH in the city of LA should be supporting us in the Valley and through the COG. And I think that, the water money, not just in the stormwater side of the Measure W stuff, but also water supply, we're all, running around at this point, trying to figure out where we're going to get an extra, 1,000 acre feet of drinkable water. So that ought to be a part of the agenda of the COG as far as I can see it. And if we can help in making those connections in one way or another, or providing a little bit of background education, love to lend a hand on that.
Say, Gary Parker here, Santa Clarita Valley, San Fernando Valley Housing Coalition. What's a good contact? Email, phone number? John.
You could do John at SFV COG. Here, I'll put it in the chat.
There we go.
All right, good. All right. Thank you, Gary and Dennis. Any other questions? I don't see any. Do you see anybody else, Erica? I'm looking around here, but.
No, nothing else, but everybody feel free to put it in the chat if you'd like to.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, thank you so much, John. Great to hear from you. I learned a lot of stuff, took some notes here. Good to know about the good work that you're doing. So yeah. All right. So now we'll move on to Terry Dipple. Now I have to say, I've never met you, Terry, and I looked for a bio for you, but I couldn't find one. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into your COG work, and your professional work or whatever. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to hearing from you. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, there was a barking dog in the background, but I'm happy to see that the godfather of the Las Virgenes-Malibu COG, Dennis Washburn, is participating in the meeting, because Dennis was the person that contacted me. I had in the 92, 93, so about 30 years ago, I was the mayor of San Dimas and spearheaded the formation of the San Gabriel Valley COG with approximately 30 cities. And as a result of that effort, and served 2 years as president. But subsequently later, in the late 90s, Dennis contacted me and asked me if I would help him form a COG. So we got together, and I think around the end of 1999, early 2000 is when the Las Virgenes-Malibu COG became official. And Dennis served the first 2 years as the president, and subsequently was president, I think, 1 or 2 other times. So it's the leadership of Dennis Washburn that got the COG going and had the vision. And I've been the chief cook and bottle washer of the COG since its formation, much like San Gabriel Valley COG. As far as funding, our COG has a very limited budget, but with grants and other things, now we're up to a little over $300,000 in our budget. But it's at the beginning, the main focus of the COG revolved around coordinating with SCAG, because SCAG had resources that they would allocate to the various subregions. And that was one of the reasons that Dennis was so proactive in forming the COG, was in order to receive the fair share of funding that came. But as most of you may know, the money at SCAG dried up as far as what they share with the subregions. And now they spend most of their money within their own staff on various projects that sometimes involve the COGs and sometimes don't. But nonetheless, in the probably about 2005, after the COG had been around for about 5 years, LA Metro started developing an idea to do Measure R. And so there was a lot of background involvement with Metro in order to carve out a share of funding for the Las Virgenes-Malibu subregion. Ultimately, when Measure R was approved in 2008, as John mentioned earlier, it became a real funding source for our cities, and our COG worked very closely with our cities to develop project lists and submit them to Metro in order to get those projects underway. And it was kind of interesting evolution of the COG at that point, because I would say, in the first 5 to 8 years of the COG, the city managers really didn't have a buy-in. I think they participated in our meetings reluctantly because their elected officials were participating in the meeting. But as soon as money became involved and we had a pot of money to divide up for various projects, all the city managers scooted their chairs up to the table, and we rolled up our sleeves. And since then, the COG has been very effective in bringing much needed transportation dollars to the 5 COG cities. In addition, our governing board has looked at emergency preparedness and homelessness and environmental issues as other priority areas. And when Measure H was approved in LA County, the county decided that they were going to give us 30 grand a year to attend meetings. And we pushed back on that and said that attending meetings really isn't going to solve the homeless problem. You need boots on the ground. And we pushed the county with the help of Alicia Weintraub from Calabasas, who was the president of the COG at the time. We pushed to get additional funding, and we hired our own homeless outreach coordinator. And it's an interesting side story. Our homeless outreach coordinator has lived experience. He actually was homeless, unhoused, and stayed in Malibu for 4 or 5 years, and then subsequently was mentored by a local pastor, got involved, who took him over the hill to Hope of the Valley. He got himself situated and began volunteering with Hope of the Valley, became an outreach worker for Hope of the Valley, and then we hired him in March of 2020 as our homeless outreach worker. His name's Gabriel Graham, and just does a great job for us. So we can't be more pleased to have that extra support. As you might know, the homeless situation, if you want to call it, is really that serious in our cities from Calabasas to Westlake, although we do have instances of people experiencing homelessness and people staying in those areas. But the majority of the homeless population in our COG is in the city of Malibu. And so while the COG receives county resources for homelessness, we do spread that around throughout the COG area, but predominantly in Malibu, where the serious problem is. But over the years, with the back to transportation, with the passage of Measure M in 2016, it has significantly increased the efforts that we spend on transportation, active transportation, and related projects in our subregion, and has been a tremendous extra support for the COG cities to have these resources. And we've been very fortunate in the efforts. But the one thing that back in the day that I preached to the San Gabriel Valley cities in the early 90s, when some of them didn't want to join because they felt that they were more on the fringe or couldn't really relate to other cities in the valley, I said, we all breathe the same air, we all drive the same freeways, we all have to dispose of our trash, we all have those issues that connect us, even though the cities are independent. And that's the same with our COG. We have 5 cities, some of them distinct from the others. We have a city, Hidden Hills, with 1,800 people, and then we have Calabasas with 24,000 people. So we have a variety, but all of the cities through the governing board have pulled together in order to make the entire region a better place for the residents and the businesses working in the area. And it's become a very active COG in other areas that we do, and has really grown in its popularity, which is kind of surprising. Back when Dennis was had the vision to form the COG, most governing board members didn't really know what a COG was and didn't really know what they were going to do, and but they enjoyed the camaraderie in the beginning and getting to know some of the issues in the other cities, and then it's really turned out to be a very strong organization as a result of that early investment in time and money. So I'll be happy to answer any questions, and of course Dennis can chime in to add additional information that I may have missed.
Thank you so much, Terry. That was great. Now, I know you kind of alluded to it, but what are the cities in your jurisdiction? There were several, but maybe.
Oh, sure. It's 5 cities. It's the cities of Agoura Hills, Calabasas, Hidden Hills, Malibu, and Westlake Village.
Great. All right. Thank you. And just in case you're on the call, I think both John and Terry referred to SCAG. If you're not familiar, SCAG stands for Southern California Association of Governments. I think they have their jurisdiction includes, is it 6 counties in Southern California? And they do a lot of regional planning and coordination around issues mentioned, transportation, housing development, utilities, a lot of our infrastructure, if you will, that is important for the to be regionally connected. So anyway, just a little note of explanation there in case that's not familiar to you. So any questions for Terry? So here comes a question on our chat. How can the community be more involved with their COG?
Well, I guess through their governing board representative and our COG. I mean, yeah, that would probably be the easy answer.
Yeah, I would agree that it's the ability for you to talk to the member that's on the board that represents you as a community, and help educate them on the issue and let them know how it might be a regional issue. Because both Terry and I mean, I'm not going to speak for Terry, but I think I know, we take our direction from the board, right? If the board wants us to do something, we aim to serve, right? We're there at the service to them. And so, but I think my approach is, we get a lot of requests from folks like, hey, we really need to deal with the encampment under this freeway. And I think, okay, here's your representative. Like, I just refer it back to a city council office or a city contact in one of the non-LA cities. So I think the opposite is true. If you want to get involved, like sort of go through them again, or public, our public programming that's available, our workshops and things on transportation is something you can participate to. You can sign up on our email list on our website, and you can be aware of what's coming. It's not as much, right? Both Terry and I think we are focused on serving our member jurisdictions. And so that's where most of our attention is. So if there's a way to serve them, we'd be happy to talk with you.
So to summarize then, if you live in the city of LA and you want to have sort of input on the regional stuff that's going on, you'd contact your local city council member, or if you're in Glendale or Burbank or whatever, or Calabasas, you contact your local city council member who sits on the COG. Is that correct? Okay. And then and your hearings, when you have hearings on certain issues or whatever, are they public where people can come? Is that it? So you can sign up, as you said, to the email list, and then
these are they're Brown Act meetings. Ours are on Zoom right now. Anybody can attend, call in. It's like a city council meeting, public comment, all that sort of stuff.
Right. Yeah.
Same with us.
Okay.
Our website is lvmcog.org. And we have a monthly governing board meeting, which is a city council representative from each of the 5 cities. And then we have a monthly TAC meeting, which is the 5 city managers.
Great. So I see Erica posted the
Thank you, Erica.
Las Virgenes email or website. John, can you post your information as well? That would be awesome. All right. Great. Any other questions, comments? All right. Well, oh, yes, I see Dennis has his hand raised.
I think, Marianne, you raised a critical issue at the beginning of this whole meeting, and that is one of our major missions at the Economic Alliance and the people of the San Fernando Valley is to get as much of the funding that we're entitled to and bring it home. Transportation does that, but there's money even at SCAG. At the outset of our COG, there are conditions that you have to follow in order to obtain money out of the budgeting for the Southern California Association of Governments. And, they get about, what, $10, $12 million a year federal money, Terry, to, support the local councils of government and activities that are done independently or in league with the SCAG organization. So it would be smart for us at the Economic Alliance to understand the mechanisms are going to see
Froze.
opportunity
Wow.
to get our fair share and bring it home.
Yeah, okay, thank you. You froze just a little bit there, Dennis, but I think we got the recommendation that you're making, so thank you for that.
Good.
Any other questions, comments?
I will say that while John and I don't collaborate on a lot of projects, we do have a monthly meeting. About, I don't know, 5 or 7 years ago, I suggested to the COG executive directors in LA County that we meet on a monthly basis, because it's like our cities. Our cities are different, but we all share certain interests, and it's the same with the COGs. While we're all different in LA County, we all share interests in getting funding from Metro, getting housing funding, other issues like that, water funding, that when we speak as a group with one voice, we're a lot stronger than we are independently. Just like with our COG cities, when they speak with one voice, they have strength, but when they speak together through the COG, they have a stronger voice. So that's been a very effective way for the COGs to increase their clout, both collectively and individually, with a number of the agencies that we partner with.
And that's so critical when you live in a county with 10 million people.
Right.
How do you get your voice out there unless you have a big voice?
Right.
So
that's right.
Yeah, very important. Very important. All right. Any other questions or comments? I don't see any, but thank you so much to John and Terry. Very interesting.
Sure.
Keep up your good work in regional collaboration. That's so critical and in effective governance, I should say, and keeping our elected officials honest about things that they discussed and then, voted to approve and then need to follow up on. I'm sure part of your work is kind of reminding some of your government entities that you said you're going to do this. Now, are you going to actually do it? So at any rate, very good to have both of you with us. And just a reminder, Erica, I think our Economic Alliance annual meeting and holiday event is on December 15th. Do I have that right? Okay. You want to give us a little, just give us a little blurb so everybody knows, and you can
Sure.
call
Our
the
annual
details out.
meeting. Oh, sorry. Annual meeting on December 15th, 8 a.m. over in the City of Calabasas Founders Hall. All are welcome. I can put the information in the chat for you. And we do the installation of our board of directors. And then we also have the 5 cities presenting their state of the cities reports and our annual report also for the Alliance. So we hope you can join us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Should be a great event. Yeah, thank you. So, all right. I think with that, I want to say happy Thanksgiving to all of you. We won't have a meeting in December. Take a little break because there's lots of holiday stuff going on, and we'll be back again January 19th. We have the director of Holos communities that's going to be talking about housing, and they have an interesting partnership with San Fernando Valley, San Fernando Health Center. So that will be our feature in January. So happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays. And if we don't see you before or on December 15th, we look forward to seeing you in the new year. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, John. Thanks so much. Good to see you.